All right, full disclosure. When I sat down to write this speech up, I thought, okay, it was a good idea. Let's look at the emerging digital world here in the UK and compare that to the US. We have the Kindle now here, and that's the moment where you're going to have a really robust market. Well, I started looking at the numbers, and I said, where's the numbers? Where's all the stats? Where's all the information I'm going to need? And I'm realizing that it's really too soon. So while there's plenty of evidence out there, there's plenty of anecdotal evidence, I decided to shift focus a little bit back to the original idea I had for this talk, which was to look at what was going on in the US and bring along some of the things that are happening here and seeing how they work together, because what's happening there today is happening here tomorrow. So I think there's some relevancy there. Okay, so pardon my, by the way, my far southwestern British accent, as I'm learning to speak. And I have to, when I go home, by the way, I'm constantly ridiculed for my British vocabulary by my children, so I'll try to keep it in between British and American English. We're going to start off with devices. So what's been going on there? The first thing is this incredible moment that happened when I walked into a Barnes & Noble one day and I said, where's the store? It's all Nook. It's incredible. And the results have been incredible too. This is something that you should pay very close attention to. There was no reason, there was no way Barnes & Noble was going to pull it off and make this work. But William Lynch came in and had a strategy, and that strategy was, we've got to turn our stores into digital centerpieces. And he turned that around, and they've sold many, many, many devices as a result. And retailers really have to pay attention to this. There is potential for digital in a bricks and mortar retail environment, and there's your proof. Devices, though, they seem to come and go. If you look at this screen here, thanks, Stephen, you see a whole lot of devices, and those devices are, some of them are still around, some of them never will be, but many of them were sort of these flash in the pans. There's some incredible technology that was on display here. Everything from the Alex Reader to the Q to the Skiff to the Entourage Edge to the No device. But I think it's really interesting to see that these were all within a probably 24-month period came and went in the US market. And it's clear that it's not the device that's driving the US market. A device started the US market with the Kindle, but devices are not driving the market. What's driving the market is platform. It's really important to understand that. Funny, interesting segue. Platforms and models. So what else is going on in the US market? The 30% solution. So, much to some of my friends here's chagrin, the market has turned in the US to all big six are now working in the agency model. And I think it's very important that the decision for Random House to go into the agency model revolves as much around the notion of controlling how books are sold and what price points they're sold at in different channels as it is to anything else. Random, like all the other publishers in the US, have seen that the digital marketplace is the center of what we're doing, not the periphery. And so, as Marcus Doley says, it's outstripping even their most ambitious predictions. And so they're looking to innovate within that space. And to innovate within that space, they're looking for a business model that helps them control much more of the space. Well, there's some complications to that, isn't there? Because right now, there's a tremendous channel problem. You have one incredibly closed channel, which is and platform, which is everything that works through the Amazon platform. But the platform exists on a bunch of different devices, and I should just say devices. One of those devices, the iPad, and then you combine that with the iPhone, controls an enormous number of device accesses by consumers. And so you have a growing issue coming, and it's supposed to be coming to a head in June, according to the press releases of Apple, that there's going to have to be an ability for platforms to pay what I would call a tax to Apple for access to their customers. Customer access is going to be a marketplace that we have to watch very carefully. It's going to be a battlefront. How you as a Kindle user deciding to access your book on your iPhone or buy a book, it's actually about buying a book on your iPhone, it's going to make some really interesting bumpy roads ahead. And you should pay very, very close attention to this, because I think it's going to be one of the things that either frees up the market for further development or really complicates it and slows it down. So we have devices, we have platforms and models that we're selling in the US, and of course we have e-publishing initiatives. I couldn't resist this title. So what are bodice rippers is what we call romance novels. And of course, then I had to find the pun with backlist strippers. Carina and Avon Impulse are two born digital imprints. This is another area to pay very close attention to. And of course, it's very natural that it happens in the romance arena. Genre fiction, and particularly romance and science fiction, have an incredible ebook audience. People are just absolutely committed to E in this area. So to see two imprints come along which are specifically catering to E first or even E only, I think is a sign of many, many things to come. Of course, on the other hand, there's incredible backlist out there. There's an unbelievable number of titles, authors, works that have no digital home. They might not have a digital home because there are no digital rights on them available. The rights may be held up, tied up. It may be that even something as simple as the contracts do not have terms yet worked out between the publisher and the author of the estate. There are companies that are focusing on this marketplace, this area in our backlist that's going to be coming under threat. And it should be noted that in US copyright law, in 1978, there was a major change in our copyright law such that there's effectively a window after 35 years of a work being in copyright that was published from 78 onwards. So the first year will be 2013, where authors have a 5-year, or copyright owners have a 5-year period in which they can reevaluate the rights ownership of their work and reclaim that right. Gordon, I know you're going to be writing this down, and David. There's a lot of people who are paying attention to this very closely. It's going to mean that there is going to be a shift in the marketplace. I think this is going to be devastating to the music industry, the music publishing industry. The rights will be reverted to the authors, if they so choose, or to the rights holders. So companies like Open Road, which are, have a very, very, I think, ambitious target of going from 1 million to 10 million this year in sales. The future does hold a lot of opportunities for these non-traditional publishers. Okay, so E can make an author, and E can take an author. You're going to be seeing a lot of this. Amanda Hocking sells a bazillion copies of her works, her series of goth romance, tween, kids, young adult, I don't know what to call this stuff. We publish it, but I don't know what to call it. And makes a name for herself with very inexpensive ebooks that just spread like wildfire, and makes a $2 million payday for a 4-book series with St. Martin's. And there's a lot of backstory on this. I'm sure you've read of all the bidding that was going on, and E only and P publishers joining together to try to get this work. There's going to be a lot of this happening out there. Authors are going to make it in E to become P published with us. And we should pay close attention. And of course, Barry is just the latest of some of the other high-profile authors who've decided that they can make it on their own now that their publisher has built their name up and made them a big star. Oh, did I say that? Did that imply something? I'm really sorry. I really, really didn't mean that. Yeah, I know. Well, you know. Okay, what's next? I think we have to have a moment of silence. Please, this is very serious. Now, some might argue that we never got off the ground, so, how can we bury the enhanced ebook? There's a lot that goes on in this space. There's a lot of reason to think that the enhanced ebook will have an incredible future in education and how to. But the idea of innovating on narrative reading, the immersive narrative reading process, is just a non-starter, and I've been smug about this area for many years, and I've got to say I'm even smugger now. It is interesting to note, though, that it's not enhancing our works, it's not changing our works, it's actually doing what we do with our works that's really what's working most. The fact that E bestsellers and P bestsellers are so conjoined and so aligned. If something's a hit, it's because we're marketing it and making it a hit, and it's a hit in the form, in every form. And that's, I think, the powerful thing. It's not so much for us right now what we can do digitally, but what we can do with our works across all forms and all formats. Deliver to the customer the works the way they want it, and it's going to work. Okay, so what else is going on? Well, there's always talk about Google, isn't there? It's the endless Google talk. So recently we've had we've taken one on the chin, as we've said, as I punned mercilessly. I was going to say we are very unsettled about this, but yeah, that's just as bad. Here we are. 2004 was the start of the Google Scanning Library project. We are now 7 years in. There are, and I should correct that, it's not 12 million files scanned. I've actually learned that it's 15 million files scanned. There are 15 million files scanned and sitting in libraries across the US, and there is no legal binding on those files. We all know that there are a lot of people working really hard to find a way forward. But I've heard, unfortunately, what I've heard about making things opt-in is simply the Google Book Search program, and that does not solve anything to do with the orphans. So this is a big issue. This is a big issue in copyright. There's global ramifications for this, obviously, and we need to keep our eyes on that one. But there's also an interesting and slow-growing opportunity that's happening in the US, and it revolves around independent bookstores. Now, in the US, we still have a much larger percentage of our trade sold through independent bookstores than here. And there's also the IndieBound Alliance, which allows booksellers a platform, a digital platform, in order to plug into their own, for them to plug into, which has launched a multi-platform Google ebook play. Anyone in the US will tell you this is tiny. We haven't seen it really impact anything. There's a lot of complications to it. Independent bookstores specialize in collecting and selling titles for their communities. They don't discount. They don't understand how to price and model things to attract customers. They're about the local community. And so their initial look at this was to, of course, maximize their per sale profit by throwing up full-priced ebooks. And of course, full-priced ebooks, especially those outside the agency model, are very expensive, and they're not competitive. As that evolves, I think this becomes a much more significant and interesting development in the US, and potentially the future of independent bookselling in America and around the world. And I think that's coming to a bookstore near you fairly soon. So this slide is basically the one area where I felt like I had a little data that I could play with to show you the comparison between the US and the UK. And these announcements just came out last week, so it shows you how little information I was working with. So comparing the girl with the dragon tattoo. Random House announced last week that they sold 1 million units of the girl. And of course, today they're selling that in the agency model. So I'm drawing a few conclusions here, that its price of roughly $8, at 70% of that went to the publisher, leaving them with about 5.6 million in ebook sales for that title alone. That's a healthy number. I think it's last week, Quercus also announced that for the first quarter this year, they sold £1 million worth of ebooks. So in a distribution model at $7.99, using a 50% average discount, just to make my life easier for the maths, to the publisher, I'm reckoning that the 3 titles combined. Oh, and by the way, you notice I'm giving them no credit for any other ebook sales. I'm just saying all of it was those 3 titles. That the 3 titles combined would come up with roughly 250,000 units. I suspect the first one's probably 100,000 of it. The other 2 are about 75. But that's an unbelievable number of ebooks sold in a 1 quarter of this year for a single series of 3 books. And I think these numbers are starting to look really real, really solid. These are numbers. We're looking at 1 title here, 1 author, 1 series. And we're seeing numbers that dwarf the entire ebook sales in the US only 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. So that's pretty impressive. Also, a shout out to those who are on the Read 2.0 listserv who actually provided me with some of the inspiration for these slides. So thank you very much. And that's it. Cheers.